Why INFJs act naive. 8 hidden reasons nobody talks about. There is something almost paradoxical, almost quietly confusing, about the INFJ personality type, something that has led many people to misunderstand them, underestimate them, or even take advantage of them. It is the tendency for INFJs, some of the rarest and most perceptive people in the world, to appear naive. And if you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you've been told that before, maybe by family members who don't quite understand how your mind works, or by friends who misread your silence for simplicity, or maybe even by strangers who assume that because you are gentle, patient, empathetic, and introspective, you must not see what's really happening around you. But in reality, you do see it. You've always seen more than you let others know. And what looks like naivety on the surface is often something far more complex, far more intentional, far more quietly powerful. In this video, we're going to explore 8 deep reasons why INFJs often come across as naive, even though they are, in truth, deeply intuitive, emotionally perceptive, and incredibly aware of patterns others overlook. 1. INFJs pick up red flags but often give second chances. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of the INFJ personality. You notice red flags early, sometimes long before the other person even realizes they're showing them. But instead of confronting them immediately or pushing someone away, you often choose to wait, observe, and hope. You want to give people time to reveal who they truly are beneath their fear, their defensiveness, their trauma, or their habits. This ability to see both a person's flaws and their potential simultaneously is part of what makes INFJs such compassionate idealists. You don't see people as static. You see them as evolving stories, unfinished chapters, emotional beings in motion. And because of that, you often give second chances, sometimes even third or fourth ones, not because you don't see what's happening, but because you want to give people the opportunity to grow into the best version of themselves. Others misinterpret this. They assume you didn't see the warning signs, but in reality you saw everything and chose hope anyway. INFJs are psychological gardeners. You notice the weeds, but you try to nurture the flowers. This tendency can make you appear naive to those who expect relationships to be transactional or self-protective. But your willingness to hold space for growth is not a flaw. It is a deep testament to your belief in human transformation. However, it does leave you vulnerable to being misread. People might think, INFJs don't know what's going on. INFJs don't realize they're being mistreated. INFJs are too trusting. But the truth is that you're often painfully aware of mistreatment. You just choose patience before judgment. You choose to wait before withdrawing. And you choose to give people the chance to be better before deciding they're not. This is not naivety. This is compassion mixed with intuition, and it's far more intentional than people realize. 2. INFJs see the best in people before they see the worst. INFJs have a deeply symbolic way of seeing others. You don't just see what someone is doing, you see what they could do. You don't just see who they are in the present, you see who they might become when they heal, when they grow, when they finally reach the potential you sense within them. This future-oriented perception comes from your powerful introverted intuition, which paints a vivid internal portrait of possibilities and connections. When you meet someone, you intuitively construct a vision of their inner world, their potential, and their emotional core, often long before they themselves fully understand who they're becoming. But because you see the ideal self so clearly, you often give people the benefit of the doubt, even when their actions don't fully align with the person you believe they could be. You operate with an internal narrative that says, they're capable of more. They're trying, they're hurting, they're learning, and because of that, you may overlook patterns that others would react to immediately. To outsiders, this looks naive. To the INFJ, it feels like loyalty, empathy, and faith in human goodness. But there's something important to understand. You are not blind to people's flaws. In fact, you notice them earlier than most. You simply prioritize someone's potential until their behavior leaves you no choice but to reevaluate your perception. And when that moment comes, when you finally see that someone will not or cannot grow into the person you envisioned, That's when you emotionally withdraw, quietly, completely, and often permanently. This is known as the INFJ door slam, one of the most misunderstood INFJ defense mechanisms. People say, INFJs snap suddenly. But the truth is, you didn't snap. You simply reached the threshold at which your vision of someone's potential could no longer justify their actions. This ability to see the best first is not naivety. It is idealism fused with intuition. And it's one of the reasons INFJs connect so deeply with certain people while feeling alienated by the world at large. 3. INFJs avoid conflict, leading others to think they're passive. INFJs tend to fear conflict not because you're weak, but because conflict feels emotionally chaotic, unpredictable, and deeply draining. When you are in conflict with someone, you don't just hear their words, you feel their emotions, their intentions, their fears, and their insecurities. The emotional noise becomes overwhelming. To preserve your internal balance, you often choose to keep the peace. You speak gently. You listen more than you argue. You avoid escalating situations that feel emotionally unstable. And because of this calm, peaceful demeanor, people mistake your silence for naivety. They assume you're unaware of the tension or incapable of defending yourself. But what they don't realize is that INFJs are constantly analyzing the emotional landscape, weighing every possible outcome before you say a word. You're not avoiding conflict because you're naive. You're avoiding conflict because you are deeply aware of how destructive it can be when emotions spiral. INFJs are the type who would rather lose the argument than lose the relationship. But when the relationship becomes harmful, that's when you quietly walk away, leaving people stunned by the depth of your resolve. You aren't naive for avoiding conflict. You're strategic. You're empathetic. You're emotionally intelligent. And anyone who mistakes your calm for weakness simply does not understand how much strength it takes to choose peace when chaos is an option. 4. INFJs keep their observations hidden, creating an image of innocence. One of the most powerful yet subtle aspects of the INFJ personality is your ability to observe quietly. You notice everything: body language, inconsistencies, hidden motives, emotional undertones, the truth behind someone's words, but you rarely reveal everything you see. In fact, INFJs often hide the depth of their insight because you don't want to hurt people. You don't want to embarrass them. You don't want to expose them. You don't want to burden them. You don't want to make them uncomfortable. So instead of revealing your full awareness, you play innocent. You nod. You listen. You let people think they're telling you something new, even when your intuition already mapped the entire situation. To outsiders, this calm listening posture looks naive, inexperienced, or unaware. But in reality, INFJs are simply choosing restraint, choosing empathy over confrontation, and choosing harmony over dominance. Your silence is not naivety. Your silence is wisdom in disguise. You know that people reveal who they are on their own timeline, and forcing the truth out of them is unnecessary. So you wait, you watch, and when the moment is right, you respond with clarity that often shocks people who assumed you weren't paying attention. INFJs appear naive not because they don't understand, but because they understand so deeply that they choose not to expose everything they know. 5. INFJs get lost in idealistic narratives. INFJs live in the world of meaning, symbolism, emotional truth, and possibilities, which often means you see life as a story rather than a series of events. You are drawn to deep emotional narratives, stories of redemption, stories of personal growth, stories of love and connection, stories of transformation. You believe in emotional arcs, character development, and the beauty of human change. But sometimes, your internal narrative becomes so strong that you may overlook practical realities. You may hold onto hope longer than you should. You may trust someone's story more than their behavior. You may see symbolism in actions that are actually just coincidences. You may create a future vision so grand that you ignore present flaws. This is not naivety. It's storytelling instinct. It's narrative thinking. It's the INFJ's desire to see meaning where others see randomness. But when your narrative becomes too idealistic, others misinterpret it. They think you're dreaming too big. You're trusting too much. You're imagining things. But the truth is, INFJs are not naive dreamers. You're intuitive dreamers, willing to believe in beautiful possibilities even when reality hasn't caught up yet. And yes, sometimes this causes pain, but it also allows INFJs to inspire others, to uplift them, to show them what they could become if they had the courage to grow. 6. INFJs hide their hurt, making others think they don't know they were wronged. INFJs rarely react in the moment when someone hurts them. Instead, you internalize the pain, analyze it privately, and process it emotionally before deciding what to do. This delayed reaction makes people think you didn't understand what happened, or that the hurt didn't affect you. But the opposite is true. You felt everything. You just didn't express it externally. You may appear calm. You may appear gentle. You may appear forgiving or unaffected. But inside, you're already replaying the situation, connecting patterns, evaluating the person's intentions, and determining whether this relationship is still safe for your emotional well-being. The reason INFJs get labeled as naive is that you don't retaliate. You don't accuse. You don't confront immediately. You don't demand justice. Instead, you quietly shift your emotional boundaries. You detach. You withdraw. You remove access to your inner world. And by the time others realize you understood everything, you're already long gone, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically. Your silence is not naivety. Your silence is a shield. 7. INFJs choose love over cynicism, even when it hurts. At the deepest level, INFJs act naive because you choose to believe in love, empathy, authenticity, and human goodness, despite the pain you've experienced. You choose openness over bitterness. You choose vulnerability over emotional walls. You choose understanding over judgment. You know that choosing cynicism would protect you, but it would also numb you. It would dim your intuition. It would suffocate your ability to connect deeply with others. It would turn you into someone you are not. So yes, INFJs sometimes get hurt because you love sincerely. Yes, you sometimes get misunderstood because you lead with empathy. Yes, you sometimes get underestimated because you refuse to harden your heart. But none of that makes you naive. It makes you brave. INFJs are rare because you are willing to feel deeply in a world that rewards numbness. You are willing to care in a world that values self-interest. You are willing to forgive in a world that clings to grudges. You are willing to stay soft in a world that tries to make everyone hard. Your so-called naivety is not a flaw. It is your superpower. 8. INFJs assume emotional honesty because they lead with it. INFJs, at your core, navigate life through a deep emotional and intuitive compass that guides how you treat people, how you connect with them, and how you choose to love and support them. You are wired for authenticity. You are drawn to sincerity. And because you naturally express emotions in honest, genuine ways, you subconsciously expect others to do the same, even when they don't. This doesn't mean you believe everyone is good or incapable of harm. Rather, it means you instinctively project your own sincerity onto others, especially before you've gathered enough information to know whether they deserve that level of trust. You don't project it because you are gullible. You project it because you understand how deeply honesty builds meaningful human connection, and you crave those connections in ways that are rare and profound. When you meet someone, you are more likely to assume that their intentions match the emotions they show you on the surface. If someone seems kind, you assume kindness. If someone expresses hurt, you respond with empathy. If someone says they care about you, you instinctively lean into that warmth. Not because you believe everything you hear, but because you want to believe that emotional transparency is still possible in a world that often feels guarded, defensive, and detached. This trait, rooted in INFJ extroverted feeling, makes you appear naive, especially to people who mistake compassion for weakness. But here's the truth you may already know on a deeper level. Your emotional openness isn't naivety, it's courage. It takes strength to lead with honesty in a world that rewards manipulation. It takes resilience to continue caring, even after you've been misunderstood or hurt. And it takes emotional intelligence to stay soft, without collapsing into self-protection or cynicism. But to those who don't understand your inner workings. This emotional clarity can look like simplicity. It can look like innocence. It can look like naivety. Yet beneath the surface, you are processing everything, every tone, every shift, every inconsistency, and storing it all in the quiet chambers of your intuition. You are not naive. You are simply honest first, observant second, and cautious third. If you've ever been called naive, let me tell you something. You see more than most people ever will. You feel more than most people ever could. And you understand more than most people are ready for. Your mind is a quiet storm of intuition, empathy, insight, and soul. And anyone who calls you naive simply cannot see the depth of your perception.